Hi, James. Thank you for joining me again on the podcast. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm great, mate. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Great to have you on again. I enjoyed the last episode, so I'm looking forward to this.
Nice. Me too.
Well, since we last spoke, you've got a new fanzine out. We spoke in the summer. When did this come out? It's only recently, hasn't it?
Just before Christmas.
Yeah, so Zine Age Kicks. Um, what can you tell us about it?
Well, it's I call it a dub plate or a remix of my book Animal House. It's when I finished it, this room that I'm in now was full of folders and piles of paper and just boxes of stuff that I've got all the years over all the different magazines I worked on from the early days of my fanzines that were based in Leeds, and then the music papers I worked on, and then the men's magazines, and then I just had masses of stuff, especially from the music years. Things like I just picked up along the way, like letters from musicians and postcards and set lists and photos I took of people. And I just thought, well, Animal House went so well, maybe I could give the readers another slice of it, a visual version. So that's what it is. It's 160 odd pages on great art. You call it a fanzine. It's like a scrapbook. But my fanzine cost 20p. This cost 20 quid.
Yeah, I was gonna say when I saw the things at the front and it were like 20p. Like even loaded, but that wasn't much. What, £2? Like looking back now, it'd be about 15 quid now, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. But it was just the printers had some quality art paper left over, so they did me a deal on it. But it was expensive to print, and it's been really nicely designed by Matt Sankey, who you won't know by name, but he did a lot of Oasis and Verve, Super Furry Animals, and more recently Charlatans packaging and sleeves and so on. So
Yeah, yeah.
Matt's my mate, and we just did it last year.
Well, with the book, like you say, it's sort of like your life in it through visuals. The first page is Vic and Bob. Did you used to live with one of them, or one was you?
No,
Like,
yeah, hold it up so I can see what you're talking about. Yeah, Vic Reeves was my landlord.
oh, was what was that like?
It was fine. It was like I I'd found him when him and Bob were just playing these before they were on television. They were just doing these live shows on Sunday night, and I wrote about him in the NME, and we became friends. He really liked the Human League, who I liked, and I needed. He just called me one day and he said, "I'm moving out of my flat. Do you want to rent it?" So I went down to Greenwich and I stayed in his flat. And this must have been after the first series. He'd got enough money to buy a big house, and
Yeah,
the I mean, we used to hang out a lot and drink a lot. And he would, if they ever had him and his wife had a dinner party and somebody dropped out, they'd bring me on like Mick Bates. I'd be the
what
last. I'd be. I mean, I'd be the last minute sub.
what were they like? Were the same off screen as they are on screen? Just
What,
crazy.
what's he like?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, great company, funny. They
yeah,
both.
yeah.
They both were. I mean, now because of the fishing program, like millions of people know about Bob.
Mm.
But Bob was always as funny as Jim. But Jim was more extra. That's well, his real name's Rod.
Oh, is it? I thought it was Jim.
His friends called him Jim.
Oh, really?
His parents used if I ever was with him and his mum and dad, they'd call him Rod. But Jim, everyone called him Jim. So Jim was like he was more flamboyant than Bob.
Mm.
With Bob, you could talk about football, and Jim liked all sorts of unusual things. But they were good company. Did you know what? Well, because I'd been living in London for about 4 or 5 years by that point, and these were guys who were like me, And Jim's actually was born in Leeds, but they're from the northeast. They're a bit further up, Middlesbrough and Darlington, and they had a group of mates from up there. So it was just like suddenly after a few years of being in the music press and meeting and hanging out with people like I went to school with.
Yeah, 'cause like comedians were like rock stars, like some of them back then, weren't they? Really?
Well, I think I think at that point the two guys, Rob Newman and David Baddiel, because they'd had the TV show Mary Whitehouse Experience, they were really big. That's before David did the fantasy football,
Hmm.
and they'd done Wembley. But I think at the time I was on the NME, 1991, I got a little bit bored of the music, and I started writing about um, this new sort of era of comedians. So I saw Jack D in front of six people, and then
Really?
and then we went back the next year. There was a brilliant comedian called Jerry Sadovitz. Jerry took me to see Jack D. He said, "You'll like this guy." And then we went back the next night and there were 11 people. So I interviewed Jack and I interviewed Vic and Bob opposite each other just after Christmas in the NME. So it was a quiet time. So it was the first issue of the year, there was a lot of space to give to new acts. And then there were loads of them. Alan Davis, who's a big TV star now, I saw him early on. Eddie Izzard, when he was a compere. This is before any of these were on television. For me, it was like when I'd been writing about new bands, I didn't have deals yet. It was a new era of comedy. And then, so that would be sort of 91, I think. And then by the time Loaded came out in 94, they were all had their own shows. So they were all really happy to be on the cover of the magazine.
Yeah, it is weird that it all comes back around in it, like you say. When Lordy comes in '94, they're the back and on the cover there. But with this book, it starts off with your childhood, really. You've got like action figures, pictures of you when you're younger, and comics and stuff. So these must. How old are some of these things then that you've kept?
Some of the stuff in there is from the 60s and the early 70s.
Yeah,
But like those little soldiers, they're about the size of a 5p piece.
really.
Yeah, but obviously we didn't even have computers, never mind games. So like when my kids playing like Roblox or whatever, that would have been my equivalent. We played with them for hours. You'd set them all up. There were little ones that were about the size of a penny, and then others that you can still get that are about this, about half the size, the width of a card, of a debit card or something. And
Mm.
you'd set them all up on your floor and throw tennis balls at the other guy, or cotton reels. I remember getting my mum's cotton reel for when she'd sew your clothes up. We'd throw them at each other till last man standing, and then but some of that stuff was just in boxes stuffed away at my dad's. It wasn't like I've got them out. These people that collect Star Wars toys and things like that. It wasn't like that. It wasn't like I had them on a shelf. And they were actually further back in the magazine. You'll see a jumbo record shop bag with some singles in. But all those little soldiers were in that jumbo bag, just scrunched up. So I just put that stuff in because Loaded was very much like a second childhood. And so they were the sort of things that I loved as a kid, comics.
Yeah.
Not like Marvel comics, but like British comics, like that's the bag.
Yeah, the jumbo bag, yeah.
Tiger and Scorcher and Roy the Rovers. I used to love those comics, so that's why I just put them in.
Well, another like early love of yours was Leeds, wasn't it? Leeds United. Um, you went to the Newcastle game the other week. What was that like?
What, just the other week? Yeah, it was great. I mean, apart from we lost, but it was a great game. It was one of those games where firstly, you wish you'd won, and then secondly, you wish you'd drawn, and thirdly, you wish you didn't support either team. And as a neutral, that must have been a brilliant game to watch
Yeah.
because it was a great atmosphere. And I think apart from Bournemouth, Leeds have had more. They've dropped more points from winning positions than anyone else. He's got to get his subs on earlier.
Yeah, he did it the other day as well against them. Only left it till about 85 minutes. Not enough time.
He's got to dictate the change in the formations and the plays rather than reacting to the other team.
I said that when I watched the Everton game that he waited for us to concede to then change it around.
Yeah, it's his only fault, really.
Yeah. What's it been like supporting Leeds over the years? But you've had some good times and bad times, but some good times as well.
What, with Leeds?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a curse, isn't it? Supporting a football team.
Especially Leeds, yeah.
What makes me laugh is when particularly where I mean, I came to London to work, but I live near Arsenal and Spurs. The amount of moaning that goes on, I'd like to have seen them playing Gillingham and Hereford in Yeovil like
I
we
know.
did, because actually that was a. I think Man City had it as well, and probably
Mm,
Nottingham Forest to a slightly lesser degree. You know, when you drop down to League One, that's part of the fabric of the club's history. And they were great days. We got 91 points that year in League One. You know, it was like that first year. And then we missed out when Beckford was injured on the playoff final v Doncaster. But
mm,
they were genuinely brilliant games. I went to so many games and so many clubs that I would, you know, a Spurs fan has never been to
mm.
play unless they've had them in the cup.
Yeah, yeah.
And the Arsenal fans have never played against Hereford. We got beat by Hereford on a Tuesday night, 2-0. Lee Trundle, I think, made his debut. It was like, yeah, actually, I'm saying it was a great time. That night was shit. It was a 10-mile drive, 10-hour drive there and back,
Jesus.
which obviously, you know, that's the sort of thing you do. But I love seeing Leeds away, especially away. I went to
Mm.
Man U at Ellen Road, and I was surprised how quiet it was.
What, the other week?
Yeah, the Sunday morning game. I think maybe it was too early. No one had had a drink. Everyone was tired.
Yeah, it was
But
shit time on it. Yeah.
but also, I was looking at the opposition, thinking these are like a different set of players in time, the type of players they were to the people that typically Leeds have done battle with there.
Mm.
And it was like so there, but it did worry. It's sort of like I found it a bit alarming how quiet the cop were.
I've heard that. I haven't been this season, but I've heard that since when we go up, it just isn't the same. I went to Spurs at home, but we're already down by that point the other year. But yeah, I've heard that the atmosphere is just not the same. Unless they're winning, obviously. Like, what
Yeah.
were it like when they went 1-0 up?
When I was a kid and we'd go, the cop was wild.
Yeah.
Being like an 11-year-old kid in the cop was just, you'd get there early to try and get a decent view and then it'd fill up. You know, anyway, you had to sort of stand on your tiptoes, pushing your way yourself up on the iron bars that they had scattered around. But I like this season for Leeds. I'm a little bit nervous as we speak today because Burnley and Palace are both buying quality Premier League players, and I'm slightly worried that
Mm.
we might. The only danger is that we draw ourselves into relegation.
Yeah.
Because if West Ham and Nottingham Forest keep winning, it'll only take two more wins than us to be ahead of us. You know,
Yeah.
so that's a bit concerning. But we did buy a lot of players in the summer.
To be fair, after that run, but started at Man City and then until recently, like against Man United, I guess I thought we'd be down right at the bottom. You know, we had like Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea. It looked like a tough run, didn't it? But then it's come
It
back
was
around
worrying.
again.
I mean,
Yeah,
I never thought we'd be at the very bottom because I thought the players that we retained, people like Ampadu and Rodon and
yeah,
Struick, um, I thought that's a good key sort of defensive triangle there. And so I didn't think we'd do bad, and I thought they bought well. I think Stack's a really good buy.
yeah. He's a good player.
Okafor looked lively. Calvert-Lewin's been the surprise of the season. Him and Granit Xhaka have been the two big surprises, really, haven't they? In the him up at there at Sunderland.
Yeah.
So, but I like it. Every point counts. Every game counts. I was trying to get to Everton, but I couldn't get a ticket, and it is exciting. It feels like, although we're two places above relegation, that's actually it's been an enjoyable season after the first. Well, we started off okay, but then that dip
Yeah, yeah.
October.
It didn't look like we are going to get back out, really, did it?
Well, the good thing was he was forced to change, I think, because of injuries. And then when he had Namacha and Calvert-Lewin together, and he played three at the back. Suddenly, against Man City in the second half, suddenly realised that he could. He saw what many of us as fans had seen, that there was strength in other areas, and so yeah, he's responded a bit.
It's like Everton though, like when we went 1-0 up and we were absolutely brilliant first half, then second half, let them get back into the game, and it's
Everton,
like 2 points dropped in it. Do you know what I mean?
well, they bought on Dewsbury Hall,
Yeah,
and he changed it, didn't he? But I think he just left it. I think he should have changed the formation when we were 1-0 up.
yeah,
He always leaves it until the opposition have improved their position.
yeah. What?
In the mag, there's loads of leads in there and football, and there's like my old scrapbook and all sorts of stuff, old photos.
Sabutio and things like that, yeah.
Yeah, I love Sabutio. I found a box at my little boy's Christmas school fair, the primary school fair.
Yeah.
They said, how much do you think that is worth? And I just said, I don't know, I'll give you 25 quid for it. And it was just full of old teams and a pitch and some stuff. I mean, I had some Sabutio anyway, but I love it. I mean, I think the reason I put that stuff from childhood in is, as I said, there was so much childlike enthusiasm and obsession at Loaded that I wanted to show a bit of, what my things that I loved as a kid were.
Yeah, it is good how it goes through the years, but I was going to say, like, when you get onto your early fanzine that you started in Leeds, it's no wonder you made it with Loaded, because the effort you put in, like, travelling up and down the country. And how would you pitch the fanzine to people? Obviously, you've got to speak to them for them to buy it, like a 101 thing, wasn't it?
What I would do is, I mean, the fanzine would mainly be music. The odd other article about Brookside or Hunter Thompson or a comedian like Ted Chippington, or and so I would say I had 3 or 4 bands in there. It might be bands like the Redskins, Billy Bragg, The Farm, Three Johns, Serious Drinking. They were the sort of people I wrote about. I would just look in the NME to see where they were playing anywhere in the country. And I mean, if it was in Sheffield or Hull, that was the first cover, Tackle Bazag. If it was in Sheffield or Hull or Manchester, I could just hitch. I just get it was the same bus that I would take to Ellen Road.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the 1 or the 4 from outside the original Oak in Headingley. And it would take me all the way through Woodhouse into town and then out to Beeston. But I'd get off just before it went up to the Beeston at the beginning of the motorways. And I'd hitchhike to those places. But sometimes I remember me and my mate, we hitchhiked all the way to London to a gig one time when we were at school. I mean, I'd go fucking mental if my son did that. But I was there. I don't even know. I must have told my dad I was going. And stay with the band, Serious Drinking in Whitechapel in East London. And then I would take, I don't know if you have them anymore, but there used to be these really good Army and Navy stores in Leeds. And they were selling ex-Army jackets and long coats and bags and all. I mean, lots of people just dressed from there because the clothing was quite sort of hardy clothing. You get combat trousers there. A lot of the punks would go there for them. And you used to get these RAF bags that were blue canvas bags, and you could put them over your shoulder and there'd be 2 buckles and a big flap. And we all had them at school with the school bags in. So I'd just throw out all the school books and put my fanzines in. It could take about 30 odd fanzines, which, say I was going with a band for a couple of days, I'd take as many as I could. If I was going in the van with them to a few different gigs. But normally I'd take about 15, 20, and then I'd just go up to people at the gig. Because if you think about a gig, there's a lot of hanging around. People getting early, they're getting early to have a drink. The support band comes on, then there's quite a long gap again. And I just used to harass people and make them laugh, hard sell, just basically until they'd give me the money to go away. But some people knew about the fanzine because it would get good reviews from people like John Peel or NME or Zigzag. And or they might see me at other gigs and they've bought one before. So I would be going home. My trousers would be bulging with like 1.5p, 1p, 2p. We didn't have a little 5p coin, then we had a bigger 5p coin. And it was just like, it was just big bulging pockets full of brass. And then, coppers. And then the 20p, the arrival of the 20p sorted out my pockets. I don't mean I made loads of money. I mean, I stopped having to get, I used to have to stay. I didn't know how to really sew, but if my mum wasn't around, I'd staple my pockets back together again with a stapler to just keep. I had the staples rubbing my leg. But it was a great scene. There was people you've had on your show, Peter Hooton, him and Phil Jones and their mates. They had a magazine, a fanzine in Liverpool called The End, and then John Robb, who's a big music champion now from Louder Than War. John had one in Blackpool, and then he moved to Manchester, and then there was Chris Donald had one called Viz Comic, which it was just like a fanzine, but then that ended up selling 1 million copies, and all over the country. Six Music DJ Steve Lamack. Steve had one from Harlow in Essex called A Pack of Lies, and there were these people in just every town and city had a fanzine. So I was sending them out, or we were swapping them, or I'd be staying with them. I've just seen, just when I told you I was going out to post some of these, I just saw Bobby Gillespie.
Did you?
Yeah, I was just chatting to my mate in the street, and I heard, "All right, James." And I look up, Gillespie's in his car, and he's going to the park to walk his dog.
Jeez. I
met Bobby when I was selling my fanzines in Glasgow.
Really?
Right at the beginning of the Jesus and Mary chain. And, so that's when I first met him back there. He had a club called Splash One. And there's a famous author as well, a fiction author called Andrew O'Hagan. He's even younger than I was at the time. I think he was about 15. I was about 16. Bobby would have been about 18, 19. And so there's a lot of people who later on kept going, and they were doing record labels or running clubs or running record shops or, doing fanzines. And there was a genuine underground in the 80s. And I'm still in touch with quite a few of those people.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah,
we all kind of came up at the same time.
Yeah.
So I'd be able to get them into the NME when I was there, or Sounds before it. And so it kind of like, and the last issue of Attack on Bazag, which is in there with John Belushi on the cover with it, it's quite a well-made cover. It's not like my collages or John Langford's illustrations.
Yeah, here I've got it here. That one.
Yeah, so that was designed by Mick Peake, and Mick went on to do all the Man City merchandising that looked like Oasis. And Mick Mick designed the Man City badge.
Really?
Yeah, he went from Attack on Bazag to doing Man City, but and now he works with the Cult. But just as I was leaving to go to London, I got a girlfriend in London, and I was getting more and more work down there on Sounds. Mick said to me, "Oh, it's a pity we're not going to do another issue, because I've heard about this band, and they're supposed to be really good, and apparently they'll walk from one side of Manchester to another to get drugs."
Happy Mondays.
Yeah. And again, that was 85.
Yeah, geez.
85, 86, around that time. And maybe 86. So I was lucky, really, in a way, because I left school halfway through the sixth form. There weren't any jobs. You could either look at it as, woe is me, I'm going to sit inside and then vegetate, or you can think, well, there's nothing really in the way. There's nothing stopping me from doing what I want to do. And what I wanted to do was go around the country selling my little fanzine and watching bands and interviewing people. And because I was so skinny and we didn't have any cash, that gave me real ambition to sell the little fanzines, So yeah, that was kind of, by the time I got to Sounds, I had 80 quid. And some nights that was from the articles I was writing for them, and I spent that going to Switzerland to find the Beastie Boys because I knew they were playing in a music TV festival. So I mean that story's in Animal House, but I think actually the hardship combined with the self belief, which everybody had, the people I'm talking about, everybody who was whether in a band or running a record label or putting gigs on, you had enough self belief to do that, and that didn't stop. So yeah, there was that was the motivation. It wasn't like we could go home to big houses in the country and relax with your parents feeding you and like so it was just keep going, try and get somebody to buy your magazine or your fans. When I was a fanzine editor, I hate it if somebody called it a magazine, so I always correct myself if I call it a magazine. It was a fanzine.
It is brilliant though. Like I say, the effort you put in and traveling up and down the country, like you say, just catching lifts off randomers that going down to London at any
Somebody
time.
said to me, if you didn't have any cash, what did you eat? I didn't eat.
Really, yeah.
Crisps and bread.
Jeez.
That was it. And it was I was really hungry. I was really genuinely hungry. Sometimes I had nowhere to stay. Sometimes I would finish when I was just contributing to sounds. There were no mobiles.
Mm.
So if you knew somebody and you rang them and said, "Could I possibly stay at your house?" If that went onto their answer machine, it wasn't like in America a service that you could ring up and get the messages, which we got later. That was it. They would, if they didn't come in until midnight and they saw the red light flashing. But yeah, there was a few. I remember a few times I thought I was going to have to sleep in the tube. I remember one time trying to sleep in the sounds office because I didn't have anywhere to go. And then the editor said, "Right, we got to go now." So that was the other thing. I was there late because I was writing articles up because I didn't have a house to go to in London, so I would just sit in the office, and that meant I got more work as well. So I guess yeah, it was good. It's a fucking great motivator when you're actually really hungry.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like you say, yeah, gives you something to get up and get out for, doesn't it?
Yeah, this is why it's good that you do this. You do whatever you can to do something different that you love doing.
It's like asking guests. Some people feel a bit awkward, but I think if you don't ask, you don't get, do you? Like, you don't know where it's going to go from there.
Yeah.
So what was that step up like then from your own fanzine, then going to sounds? Did it feel like a big step up, or was it just natural?
Well, what happened was Romford Ron, he did Everything Counts fanzine from Romford. Ronnie rang me up. He was my mate. He worked on a market. That's what I'm saying. We all had like either no job or like just sort of everyday jobs like you do when you're not doing this. And it was Ronnie rang me and he said, "I've been writing for Sounds. A new editor wants you to write for us." So I came down to Camden and met the editor, and he'd just moved from the NME, and I'd written to the NME about 5 months before to this guy, and he'd kept the letter because he knew he was leaving. And he just said, "Oh, I knew that I was coming to Sounds when you wrote to us, so I thought you'd probably get more chance of a break here." And so there was me, Ronnie. He's a film director now. Marianne Hobbs from the DJ from Six Music. She was writing there, and I just started writing there. And the big difference, to answer your question, is when I did a fanzine, it was like doing Zine Age Kicks. That took me a year to put together. I'd do about 3 or 4 fanzines a year, and then I'd have another 3 months of trying to sell them. And when I wrote an article for Sounds, if I handed it in on Wednesday, the following Wednesday it'd be in print. And I'd just be stunned. I'd pick up a copy of the magazine and just stare at it and think, this is bonkers. It's so fast. And it was the speed of the message, like, I think this band are great, and I'm going to tell you why I think they're great and why I think you should love them. And then a week later, hundreds of thousands of people could read it. It was like, and that just, the motivation for doing the fanzines was I thought it was something I could do. I was always telling people my opinion. I was into politics and music, and into the putting them into the fanzine and playing football, and suddenly it was just so fast. That's what changed it more. And obviously I was getting paid, but that wasn't the real motivator, really. It kind of I'd make I'd make the same amount of money for a live review or an album review as I would from a good night selling the fanzines. So it was good though. It was a great time. He was a good editor, Tony Stewart.
You said it took you a year to do this. When we were last talking, you were addicted to football, FIFA, career mode. Still doing that?
Yeah, it's like
You can't beat it though.
I might have to go to FIFA rehab. I'm not joking. It's interfering with my life. But do you know what? Weirdly, I think I've got a better understanding of the business of football from playing FIFA.
Really? Yeah, why? What
No,
just
because I think I see the process of recruitment differently. The turnover of play. This is bonkers, isn't it? Because you probably paid it 10 years ago when you were 15 or something. I've only just got to it. I'm 60. People look at me. I say to people, did you play FIFA? Because this is new. I played when my eldest son was young. I played a couple of times with him, like 12, 15 years ago. And then my little boy, neither of them will play me now because I just bored them stupid. And then they're better players than me in terms of the eldest one's much better. The youngest one is good with the skills, but I've got good match play. I can move the ball around the pitch well, but I'm boring about it. I could just do if there's a FIFA podcast. And then the other day I was talking to my son about how to find out which of the young talent are better. It's dead simple. It just says shows great potential, an exciting project, or has potential to be great or something. You just see all that. He said, "How do you know this?" Because I've been reading up on Reddit and all of the football websites that do, they've all got information about the best players to get absolutely hooked. It's not
weird.
good.
It's weird that because I had the Damon, from Ocean Colour Scene on the other day.
Okay, yeah.
And I said to him after we finished the interview, I said, "Oh, are you doing much today?" He said, "Oh, I've got another interview soon, but before that, well, it's about in an hour and a half, but before that, I'm going to go play FIFA." So it must be.
I'll tell you, the thing for me is if I did that, I'd miss the next interview. I was up at 5 o'clock playing today because I woke up early.
Really, yeah. You're addicted, aren't you?
I missed last Wednesday. I missed a meeting because of it. Like an important meeting. I'm doing some work at the moment for some magazine company.
Yeah, then you've got like your school stuff. Who the hell is going to employ you, Brown? And then you've got your sound letter. Did you ever think what would you have done if this didn't work out? Did you ever think of that?
No idea.
Nah.
I'd have been
not many job opportunities, were there?
I'd have been even skinnier. I think nothing. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. There was no, the only thing I thought a couple of times when I've been asked that question, I thought I wouldn't have mind working in the park, with a green fleece and a little tractor. Now they've got pretty good vehicles. Back then it would have been just a little trolley being dragged around where I was, Beckett Park in Edinburgh. And I've got no idea. I think also that was in a way why I got to where I wanted to go, because there was nothing else. It wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm doing this fanzine, but I'm also at university doing a degree in economics or whatever, anything. It was, but I was, my youngest son's 12 now, so he's at secondary school and he's got to choose what exams, what lessons to do. He starts to choose over the next few years. And I was saying to him, do business studies, because I think I would never have done that at school. Economics.
I did that.
Yeah, business
I
studies.
think that, yeah.
I imagine it allows. I don't even know what's in it, to be honest. I imagine it. You learn about how to run a business and profit and loss and forecasts and contingencies and maybe buying and selling. I don't know what it involves.
I
But
remember just watching Dragon's Den most lessons. That was what it
yeah, well, hopefully he won't do that. But it's.
was.
I think the thing with it is if you can get at some business grounding, it doesn't matter whether you want to run a hairdressers or rather promote a nightclub or you know sell things or can I be a supplier or be an agent of some sort? If you understand the basics of business, that means it's something you can take into all different walks of life. I was telling him, if you find the thing you love, and then you can. I mean, what I did was I was not bad at writing, and I knew about the bands, so the skill of being able. I mean, sometimes I read things. In fact, often I read things I wrote when I was younger, and I'd just like to re-edit. I'd like to edit it now, but yeah, it just felt like I was a bullet on the way to the target. That's what it felt like. I wasn't going to let anything get in my way, but it wasn't just day one did a fanzine, day two left school, day three joined the NME by any means. There was a lot of time frustrated. I was living in Kirkstall after my parents split up, walking along the Burley Road into town, into Leeds, going to Jumbo Records, maybe looking in the other record shops. But I liked Jumbo because they had lists of records that had come in, and
Yeah.
the staff were really friendly, and they'd have all the posters up for the gig, so they didn't mind if I hung around in there. Whereas if you hung around in Virgin or HMV, they'd think you were shoplifting.
It's still there, Jumbo Records.
Yeah, it's a little bit further. It's in the St John's Centre, isn't it? But
Yeah, it's up. Yeah.
so there was a lot of that every day, just walking in and then walking back down the Otley Road to my mum's in Headingley, and then see her every day, and then go back, and then just do the same thing. It's insane now what we have. That if you've got a laptop, you can watch YouTube, and you've got the internet. You can educate yourself. You can watch films. You can watch documentaries. You can watch people do business talks or people be interviewed from the past or the present. You got the whole world there on that little screen. Back
What do you?
then, I didn't even have. I didn't. My mates were still at school. I'd moved away because my parents had split up from the immediate area where I grew up. So it wasn't even like the older guys who used to show me T-Rex or David Bowie records in the mid-70s. It wasn't like they could say, "Oh, I wasn't seeing any of them anymore." So it was quite an isolating period of time, and I probably had more things in common with people in all over the country, doing their fanzines or being into gigs or following bands around than I had with the people where I was living in Leeds.
Oh, this sounds cover here with Joe
Yes.
Strummer.
Yeah, hold it up so we can see it.
Oh, can you see it there? Yeah. Is that the one where it's quite like emotional, really, in your book, where he thinks people have like forgotten about him?
Is it the one?
He comes up to you years later and says, like, "Oh, thank you."
Yes, yeah, he did. He did.
that one, yeah.
That photograph is on. That's taken by a guy called Peter Anderson, a photographer. And what he's on there is that's now a really hot bit of Shoreditch. It's like there's an old railway tube carriage on it, and there's an offices in there, and that's a really active area. But in 1986 or 5, when that was taken, that area was utterly deserted. It was a market area, so the only people you'd see around there were people with vans, for going to the flower market or Brick Lane where the people were selling anything. And that's the story I tell in Animal House, where I managed to get the interview and then I reread it. Rock and Roll Public Library is a Mick Jones. His family and friends do this thing called the Rock and Roll Public Library on Instagram. It's brilliant, and I think it was that they put it up. They put that interview up, and I said, "Can you send me that? Can you put?" Because I've only got the cover. I think I don't know whether I've got the actual article. I started reading that. For this is ace. This is a great piece. I was 20 or 21. I was thinking, but that's when I really, really, really wanted to be like Tom Wolfe or Hunter Thompson. I wanted to be like the best writer in the world. It's a really well written intro anyway. And it just reminded me of how intense I was and how much I believed in it. But years later, Joe came up to me and he said to me something like, I always like seeing you because you wrote about me when no one else wanted to. And I was like a little kid, I really was. I was 20 or 21. And it probably says what date it is there. I think that's the week. That is the week of the 1987 general election.
June 13th.
Yeah, if you look that up, that'll be because after that article, the NME rang me up and offered me a job.
Oh, is it? No, yeah, from that.
Because nobody had that. It was a total exclusive. And we sat in Soho outside a pub called the Crown and Two Chairmen. And we sat on the road. And Joe, this is how out there he was. He struggled to get to the bar and get a drink.
Really?
Whereas in other times of his life, he wouldn't have even had to buy the drink or even go to the bar. You know, people would have just been asking him what he wanted. And it took him a while to get served. Yeah, that meant a lot to me when I got to do that. That article changed my life.
Yeah. Have you still got it? I'd read that. You can send it over.
Yeah, I've got it on the on the messages. But I think I could only read the intro. But I've got this young guy, Isaac. He wants to help me sort my archive out. So once we've dug it out, I'm thinking of doing a more music orientated, travel-y sort of book, travelogue.
All right, yeah.
Which I'll include some of my articles in it.
Yeah, that sounds good. Like, there's some iconic covers here as well. Like, you got the Stone Roses there, NME.
Yeah, but that's an example of all the different things you got set. So, in the middle there's the Stone Roses demo tape that they sent me when I lived in Manchester.
Yeah.
And then under it that way is one set list that's been printed, the big black letters down the bottom. Yeah. And then the handwritten letters. So that's like you can see Fool's Road. And then the handwritten thing is another set list. And then that's an invite to the on the right. There's an invite to the launch of Spike Island. And then there's the actual ticket bumps. I found that ticket in a file, unused.
Did you not go?
Yeah, I did go. I was like, I arrived in a helicopter.
Did you?
With a pass, yeah.
Jesus. What was it like, that gig? That's like an iconic gig, isn't it?
Well, it wasn't nowhere near the best gig I've ever been to, but it was more that they were putting their own events on. So they played Ali Pali at a time when a lot of bands played there, and they played the Ballroom in Blackpool, which I didn't go because I was, I couldn't really. I was probably busy, but the about 10 of them went from the NME in a minibus up to, and it was so they were doing Spike Island was more about the ambition of the event of doing it than on the day they could have probably done with about 3 or 4 more support acts.
Yeah.
And it was more. I mean, it wasn't an island. It was like a park with a canal next to it, and you got to it through a subway. So it was. Yeah. It was just a barren bit of. It wasn't like. It was just a barren bit of land with a path round it. Looked like something on Crime Watch.
14 quid that ticket. Crazy.
Yeah, Gary Clayle was on. He was DJing and he was on. And I think that was it. I think that was the only support. Maybe Mike Pickering DJ'd or something like that. But the thing, at the time when I'm doing things like going to Brazil with Happy Mondays or Spike Island or going on tour in California with the Pixies, you don't realize what an ace time, how it's going to be the best time ever. They're photographs I took of Happy Mondays when I interviewed them for Sounds.
Yeah.
They're my own photos. I wish in retrospect I'd taken more photographs, but again, it wasn't like today. You point your phone up. You had to buy a film, thread it in, not fuck the shot up, take it to the chemist, get it printed, you'd get like 24 or 12 photographs back. Half of them would have like your hand over it. I mean, unless you were a proper photographer, you'd be lucky if you got 24 decent snaps.
Yeah, so it's just crazy, like you say, sort of little bits of memorabilia. But I wanted to talk about this. I can't believe we didn't talk about it before. Um, Shane McGowan, Nick Cave, and Mark E. Smith all in one.
Yeah, hold that up because no one's seen those photographs. They've never
Yeah.
been they've never been published anywhere. So that's the tape, the audio tape of Shane McGowan, Mark Smith from the Fall, and Nick Cave. Nick's the only one still alive, and he's going strong. He's doing really well. But those three there have been photographed for the NME front cover. That's my kitchen.
Jesus.
And 2 weeks ago, I visited that house. I was going to watch Dulwich Hamlet. My football coach, who coaches me, he plays for Dulwich Hamlet, and I went past that house, and I had no memory of the outside of it. But these three guys were in conversation for the NME, but nobody's ever seen that. They've seen the cover.
Yeah.
And every 8 months, somebody will send me a Facebook or a Instagram link where they're all having a big discussion about it, and they're all going, "Oh, I bet they're all off their heads." And only Nick was sober. Nick had come out of rehab the day before. Mark was having a few drinks and being quite spiky, and Shane was on acid. It was a great day, but we lived with me and my girlfriend lived with his brother. It's a big kind of like subterranean, basement flat in Camberwell in South London. My boss at NME, Alan, he always thought, he was the editor and I was the features editor. He always said if you get two people together that music fans like, you'll get a good conversation. So it's something he'd done over the years. And we were just talking, and we'd done Joe Strummer and Roddy Frame, and we'd done, I don't know if we'd yet done, but another point we did the three hot young bands, which was Darling Buds, House of Love, and Wonder Stuff. And occasionally we would do this, and at Christmas at the NME, you'd get like Peter Hooton, Paul Heaton from the House Martins, Beautiful South, and Peter Hook, all the PHs. And you'd get them to review the singles of the year and have a discussion, like on the radio when they do like Jukebox Jury or whatever they call it. And then Round Table, they call it on the radio. And so you've got two different sets of fans who are going to definitely buy the issue. And we were just in the editorial meeting at NME discussing what would be the best one we could do. And the collective decision was Shane, Nick, Mark, and each of them had somebody on the paper who knew them well. I knew Mark really well. He'd stayed at that flat in the past. He'd stayed with me occasionally. And then the photographer, Blethen Butcher, who took the pictures, Blethen was very close with Nick. They were both from Australia. And then Sean O'Hagan was good friends with Shane McGowan. And so each of us just went away and asked them. And they all just said yes. And that was it. I don't even think we talked to their PRs. I think we just, each of us rang them. And so they came together in a pub in southeast London, a Gothic pub. And we sat down and they all talked. The one thing I should have done on that page is put the cover. So it's in retrospect, that's something we've missed doing. We should have put the cover there because it's definitely in Animal House. I don't know if it's anywhere else in Zine Age Kicks, but that was it was a great, interesting day, and I think it's perhaps not surprising that the sober one's still alive.
Yeah, exactly.
But Nick was nervous. Nick was nervous because Mark and Shane were drinking a lot, and I think he'd obviously gone to rehab for a reason. I imagine in his book or something he talks maybe about that. But I know from when I stopped drinking 28 years ago this week.
Oh, congratulations.
The first, not even the first day, the first 3 years was like, it was like being on a different planet, and it was a planet where the floor, the ground could just disappear from underneath you. You can go back to what it was like. So I can now retrospectively understand a little bit more about why Nick. I'm not sure if he looks back on it too fondly. I don't know. But then again, as I say, he's alive. The other two are underground.
Yeah, it's just like, say, three like different characters in one room. What did they get on in that then?
Well, Mark was being very provocative as he was. He liked to be. He liked to control the energy of the situation. And Shane was very incredibly. I think they were all very, very well read. They're very similar characters. Mark and Nick knew each other. I think Shane was very nervous about meeting the other two. And they were all incredibly well read. Mark and Shane started having a row about Nietzsche, about what the meanings of certain things Nietzsche, the writer philosopher, had written, and so they having to say quite a, and then Mark was just insulting people, but it wasn't done in a way where he was trying to have a fight or trying to offend them. He was doing it within the context of that's what his personality was like. But it wasn't like the others were going to strop off. But they all held their own. But the thing with Shane is, Shane used to drink at my best friend's pub. And at the time, I'd spend a lot of time there as well. And you could have a conversation with Shane at 2 in the morning. And most people wouldn't understand what he was saying. But you kind of tuned in to understanding what he was saying. And he was a really intelligent guy.
Yeah.
Very knowledgeable and very, just very well informed, very self-educated about music and books and politics and history. And Mark was exactly the same. And, you can tell from Nick's writing as well that he's incredibly well read, particularly, the Southern American novelists and stuff. So it was the Deep South, not South America. And so these are three guys who'd self-propelled themselves into legendary status in music with ardent followers and still much, much revered. Obviously, Shane's record gets near the top of the charts every Christmas, and his albums and the singles. Also in Zine Age Kicks, you'll see in there the first ever Pogue single.
Oh, really? What, near the start?
But they weren't even called the Pogues. They were called Pogue Mahone, which means kiss my arse. And they were, I think Radio 1 or somebody asked them to change the name. Yeah, that's it. So that's the first ever Pogue single. And they were called Pogue Mahone. And they probably only did 1,000 of these. I heard it on John Peel. It's called Dark Streets of London. And they didn't even have a record sleeve. It was just in like an envelope thing. But I would have got that from Jumbo. But it was so punky when it started. They were brilliant live. I saw them a few times, and they were like, that's such brilliant energy.
He was a brilliant songwriter as well, wasn't
he? Yeah.
Some of the songs he's got.
When I joined NME, they were all obsessed with him. They all adored him.
Figures like that, you must have come across loads of them over the years, like that. They're just, like you say, he's intelligent, but he's kind of, what's the right word as well? Like a troubled genius, in it.
I don't think Shane was troubled. I just drank a lot in a drink. To quote Mrs. Merton, he was incredibly, paraphrase Mrs. Merton, Shane McGowan was incredibly thirsty. He was very talented, but also the Pogues were great musicians. They wrote
Mm.
not great musicians. That makes them sound like sort of 70s guitar aficionados. They just had a brilliant understanding of what was great about their own band, and they were excellent at delivering more and more songs that kind of like gave Shane's lyrics a platform. And when you asked me about Spike Island, I've never done this. I should try and do this, but I sometimes think of gigs that would be in my top 10. And one night that would definitely be in it would be in New York. And I was there with The Farm and Big Audio Dynamite in New York, and they were playing a kind of a more of a dance club. But that makes like it was small. It was a music venue, but it was renowned for being a club. And it was down near the meat market. And after they sound checked, Mick Jones, the lead man of Big Audio Dynamite and The Clash, said, "I'm going to go and see Joe singing with the Pogues. Do you want to come?" So about 3 or 4 of us went up to this really posh theatre, and we sat there. I was sitting next to John Lennon's son.
Really, yeah.
Yeah, the young one.
Sean, yeah.
And he was there with his girlfriend, and we were just watching the Pogues without Shane, but fronted by Joe Strummer. And then I saw Mick last week at Tim Burgess from the Charlatans merch market, where I had a stall selling the fanzine magazines. And I was talking to him about that night, and he remembered it well. You know, he was like, because he said, "Do you remember where we ended up?" I was like, "Yeah," because then we went back and watched Mick do his gig, and Joe came.
Oh, really?
So I watched Joe singing the front in the Pogues, sitting next to Mick in a theatre, and then Joe came down, and I watched Big Audio Dynamite, and his later incarnation of Big Audio Dynamite was really good, and BAD too, with Joe. And then afterwards, I remember being in the dressing room and Joe explaining to me about how you always need a beatbox in the dressing room. They had a big ghetto blaster, and he was saying that was his line to me, you always need a beatbox in the dressing room. He said Paul Simonon always had the beatbox in the Clash. We'd always turn it on. You always could have music playing in the build up to the gig. And then whilst we were talking, this was actually maybe before they went on, the guys from Stussy came in. I think it was Sean Stussy himself and one of his guys. They just had a huge sack. They poured this pile of clothes on the floor. This would be hard to imagine given I was so gobby, but I just didn't dive in because it was fun, Big Audio Dynamite to wear on stage. And then after the gig, we ended up back at the Mayflower Hotel, which is it's just by the scene where Travis First Look thinks about killing the politician in next to Central Park in Taxi Driver. We were in the Mayflower Hotel until the early hours. Some of the Farm, myself, I remember Kevin, the manager, was there, Mick and Joe. It was brilliant. And they were pestering him. They were going, "Come on, form the Clash, reform the Clash." And they were going, "Oh, Simo won't do it. Simo won't do it." You know, there's always one of us doesn't want to do it. And then I remember Carl from the Farm going, "I'll play bass. If Simo doesn't want to do it, I'll play bass." It was it was absolutely, that would be easily one of the best nights. But I love that Mick remembered it. He said to him, because obviously he's had probably 1,000 nights like that. But for Peter and Carl and Roy and Keith and Ben from the Farm and Kevin, the manager, and I, these were our heroes. And I think Suggs was there as well for Madness. We were all sitting, half on the bed, crouched around on the floor, drinking. The day was coming up, it was dark, looking out over Central Park. So it was fantastic. It was just fantastic. They were the rewards for all those years trying to get a lift out of Leeds, hitching to sell my fanzine, to end up in that scenario where I could review both bands in the night.
Crazy.
Sounds great, doesn't it?
Yeah, you just sound unbelievable.
It
What
was
would
great. But the other thing is, now you see this on Instagram all the time and TikTok. You see people who get a moment with their heroes and that they're nice to them, or they do kind things for them or whatever. So that wasn't the only time where an ex fanzine writer got to hang out in a hotel room with the heroes.
what other gigs would you put in the top 10 then that come to you?
Beastie Boys there'd have to be a Beastie Boys one in the. Maybe there was a club called the I-Beam in San Francisco that I reviewed. I remember that being a really exciting gig, and I remember running off the stage diving. They were just starting to go back to playing a bit more punky as well as doing the rapping. So there were loads of guys just firing off the stage, and also the Beastie Boys in the Rough Trade shop, the Slam City Skates under Rough Trade in Covent Garden. That was tiny. That was really, there might have been 40, 50 people in the room, if that. That was exciting. U2 in Las Vegas.
Oh, yeah.
On the Actung Baby Zooropa tour. That was the perfect place for their big, amazing stage show. Public Enemy, San Diego. I got trampled underfoot by girls trying to get to Favor Fave, jumped up the stage, all the jewelry and his big hat and his clock. I was on the front row, but there was seats. So it was like Ellen Road where the seats, but everyone stands up. But these seats weren't fixed to the ground. They were like school hall dinner seats. Boof! I just got knocked over. Stampede of about 15 teenage black girls just boof, trying to get to. I wasn't expecting it. They're tough girls. So that was they were great there. And what else? Rolling. I've seen I like the Rolling Stones. New Order.
Oh yeah.
Actually, I think my number one would be New Order, Smiths. The fall at the thing called the Festival of Thames Summer at GMX in Manchester.
Yeah.
I think that was probably my best ever gig.
Jesus. Not a bad lineup, that, is it?
Pardon?
Not a bad lineup, that.
Yeah, Peter Shelley played as well, and Peter had gone a little bit techno pop. He wasn't with the Buzzcocks at the time, and he'd had two really good singles called Homo Sapien 2 and Telephone Operator, and then the Fall were just around This Nation's Saving Grace, and the Smiths with The Queen Is Dead, and New Order, Low Life. So they were playing some of their best ever songs. And Ian McCulloch joined New Order for a song.
Really?
And it was just, I'd say that was early 86. Because I got, or maybe 85 even, it was a full page review I got in Sounds. And it was when I was still living in Leeds. So I think maybe 85, 86 before I moved to Manchester. And musically, that would be the best. All three bands were in a brilliant, spot. The Smiths had two guitarists. The Smiths, as well as Johnny, they had Craig Gannon, and big stage. It was the GMX. It's like a dome, Greater Manchester Exhibition Centre. And they've later on as well seen New Order in there again with the Mondays, and then not long after that, the Mondays being big enough to fill it themselves. So they would, all three of them would be in the Mondays and New Order, those two, and then the GMX. But I think Kraftwerk might have played there. Maybe I would like to have seen Kraftwerk when they had the Racers. They had the Olympic cyclists. I'd like to have done that, but that would be another amazing band, Kraftwerk. Loads of them. When I was in Leeds, I saw so many brilliant gigs. Chuck Brown and the Soul Searchers, a go-go band. They played for about 2.5 hours at the university. They were amazing. The Cramps and the Ramones. The Ramones at the Milky Way. My friends went home. I stayed for another 2 nights. just sleeping on some bloke's floor who ran a record label or something. And then the Cramps, seeing the Cramps at Brixton Academy, they were absolutely amazing. They're the two best, repeatedly the best live bands. The Cramps and the Ramones, they were absolutely amazing. But I mean, I've seen hundreds of bands. They're just off the top of my head. If I just kept talking, I saw Depeche Mode in Leeds in a wine bar opposite the station.
Oh yeah.
It's a little bar now. It's just as you come down the front where all the roadworks are at the moment. That place there, I saw Depeche Mode in there, and I saw them at the Warehouse in Leeds. They were tiny there. Who else? Mary Chain were excited when they came out. Saw them at Leeds Uni. I love the Pet Shop Boys as well. There's a picture of my NME cover in there. The Pet Shop Boys. They were brilliant. I went on their big tour when they had all like dancers, and the Pet Shop Boys always had a great sense of the visuals, of what the visuals look like on stage. So,
no.
Yeah, that was basically my article where I resigned from the NME. I wrote a leaving note at the end of the article, and only one bloke clocked it.
Why did he put?
I just said sometimes you got to know when to end, and this is it. I'm checking out, and that was it. And then I left. But so Pet Shop Boys were a great live band. Kraftwerk similarly. I'm trying to think of other people that I've seen that I mean, there's loads of other bands that I love that I've seen, but just thinking of ones that were just amazing live. I'll tell you another amazing gig I went to at GMEX in Manchester. It was a sort of anti-nuclear power benefit, and it was U2, Kraftwerk, Public Enemy, and Big Audio Dynamite. Like, what a lineup! It was absolutely amazing lineup. And that night, it was full of footballers. And because U2 just got cool again when they did Achtung Baby. And they had Trabant cars, East German Trabant cars hanging from the ceiling. And they'd got the big, they hadn't built it up as when they did the stadium tour. But there were loads and loads of footballers for this gig. And for me, this is a pivotal moment in how the culture changed. There were Liverpool players, Everton players, Manchester City players, Manchester United players. And I'm watching it between they had what the Americans call bleachers, like one of them fold-up stands. And Mark Hughes is about 5-10 feet in front of me. And he starts edging back. I don't think he realised. So we're sort of watching from the side of the stage. There's a big VIP area at the back of all these players. And Mark Hughes is edging further and further back. He's getting closer and closer to me. It's like when he's playing and he used to play with his back to the goal. And he comes all the way back. And he finally hits me on the toes. He goes down looking for a penalty. No, but it's true. He didn't go for the penalty. But I can remember the players that were there. Lee Chapman was there from Leeds. This was 92 or 93. And Lee Chapman was there. Ian Rush from Liverpool. John Barnes. Kenny Dalglish. Graham Souness. That sort of era of player, and it was amazing. And all the Manchester bands were there. So the Mondays, the Inspirals, the Roses, and a lot of the other bands that were all sitting there. And because U2 were very mainstream, there was a different generation of their friends had come. So there was people like Peter Gabriel and members of the Velvet Underground and Chrissy Hind and people like that, real big names. And there's a moment where I'm stood with a load of these musicians and I went, fucking hell, there's Lou Reed and Pete Wiley. The funniest guy in Liverpool turns to me and he goes, never mind that. There's Peter Reed. And in one, everyone just turned round and went over to Peter Reid. We all sat down, and it was like a children's TV show. There was all of the. I remember looking around, and there's like, kind of people like Sean and Bez and the boys from the Sparrows and the Mondays and the Roses. And it's like primary school, and Peter Reid sitting up on a chair, and we're all sitting there, and he's just telling stories about playing for England and Gaza and playing against Maradona, all the stories that you see all the time now. It was amazing, but that was the point when music and football was colliding. And actually, all the musicians were more interested in Peter Reid than Lou Reed. And I always thought of that was probably the first little shoot of what would become Loaded, where the very beginning of Loaded's editorial premise was football and music.
Yeah. Back then as well, like that 90s culture, they'd be out with the players drinking, and like that Liverpool squad, they were always out drinking and stuff.
I was out with them a few times.
I mean, so like you say, it's different times, is it, like nowadays compared to mid-90s?
One night I went out with Robbie Williams, Jason McAteer, Jamie Redknapp, Phil Babb, Don Hutchison, and a boy called Kenny Brown from West Ham. And we met up in a hotel in Lancaster Gate, and then we went into town and we went to this sort of bar. It was a private bar, heavy duty on the door. There wasn't letting any punter in. It was just on the south side of Covent Garden. It was called The Spot. I walked in there. It was like match of the day. It was full of football. I mean, every bloke in there was a footballer. Straight away, there's Jason Dazelle, centre forward from Ipswich, and then Spurs players, and just from everywhere. Not as famous as some of the guys I'd shown up with, but it was just a place where they drank, where they weren't bothered by people getting autographs, and loads of hot girls. And that was a sort of eye opener for me that they were, that they kind of had their own places. And they were like, and then I remember we went on to a nightclub over in Mayfair, and Don Hutchison was not long after doing the bungee jump. Don Hutchison was a good player. He played for West Ham and Liverpool, and he was Scottish international, but he was kind of like a bit wild, and he'd gone on holiday and gone bungee. Footballers aren't allowed to go skiing, have motorbikes, go bungee jumping, do extreme sports, have quad bikes, anything like that could injure them. And he'd been photographed bungee jumping. I remember he was about to start getting his trousers out and do his thing with the beer label on his cock, and I said, Don, don't do it. Don't do it. Because there were in that club, there were people with paparazzi and stuff, but they were around a lot when we did the Loaded Road shows and things. Some of the Liverpool guys would come to them, and then we had a party in Nottingham for Loaded and Paul Smith, the shop, but Paul and I hosted it, and then a lot of the players from the Midlands, Noel Whelan, Darren Huckabee, Paul McGregor, Scott Gemmell, a lot of players from Nottingham Forest and Derby and Coventry and places like that. Because the thing is, they were just young guys, and they wanted to come to Loaded parties because they would know there'd be loads of hot girls there, which there were,
So yeah, it just sound like unbelievable. What was it like with Euro '96 then in Loaded? Was that like a big coming together as well?
It was just amazing, forgetting everything that was going on, forgetting the media, just being a football fan. Stood in Wembley, looking at the scoreboard, and it said England 5, Holland 1. When I was 9, when I was 8 years old, Holland were the best team in the world. Johan Cruyff's. They didn't win that World Cup, but they were the best team because 4 years later, even without Cruyff, who was on a political sitting, he wouldn't do it. He didn't play in that next one. They were like World Cup finalists again. They were amazing. I mean, people talk about Pele, but Pele was from Brazil. That might as well have been from Mars. Johan Cruyff, Barcelona played against Leeds and got beat. in the what is now would have been the Champions League, the European Cup semi-finals. Cruyff, as the little boys playing football in the streets in Headingley near the cricket ground, rugby ground, and probably all over the country, we would talk about being the local heroes. So with me, it was Lorimer, Eddie Gray, Alan Clark, Johnny Childs, so on. And then sometimes you'd add in some like world famous players like Cruyff. But we knew nearly all of that Dutch team. And again, you have to remember, we would only see them in the World Cup.
Mm.
Other games weren't televised. I mean, there'd be live football, a little bit of World Cup. I don't ever remember seeing European championships. And the home internationals, which would be England, Northern Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, would play just before the season started. And so you very rarely saw live football. But we all knew Johnny Rep, Van der Kerkhoff brothers, Neeskins, Cruyff. These were like the people we pretended to be. So to see England beating Holland was just it was a shock. I mean, I'm talking about people talk to me all the time about the 90s, but I remember just thinking as a football fan at that game, and then I was at the game against Germany, and I was in that corner where the ball was flashed across the goal.
Really?
I was in line with the goal.
Jesus.
I was in line with the ball. I think Shearer flashed it across, and Gazza stuck his leg out, and he didn't get there.
Just missed it, yeah.
And then also I think I was at the game when Pearce scored a penalty. Maybe that was that game. When you're at a game, it all flies around, doesn't it?
Spain.
I can't remember, but Pearce scored a penalty, and he just came up the.
Yeah, I think it was Spain. Yeah.
And I think that's what I remember. I don't care about the fact there was lots of hospitality and people dropping in the helicopters and celebrities. Just the football. And Venables had got a good team, and I remember sending a box of the Loadeds, the latest issue of the Loaded, with Badil and Skinner on the cover, to Burnham Beaches, where they were training. They were building up to the Euros. That's where they were based. And then I don't know if it was before the tournament or after it. I was in Scribes West, which was Terry Venables, the England manager, had a nightclub. It was called Scribes West.
That's crazy, isn't it?
It was in Knightsbridge or Kensington. I couldn't distinguish the two at the time. It was a downstairs bar, karaoke. You'd walk in there and Sheringham would be banging out My Way. or Terry Fenwick could do, like a Kenny Rogers song or something like it. It was bonkers. And they launched a football magazine kind of off the back of Loaded they relaunched a magazine called Goal. And I had a piece with Alan Clark in the first issue. So we were at the launch of Goal. And as you know, I had a drug problem then. I was in the toilet doing some lines. It didn't seem like a problem at the time. I was doing some lines. And at that time, the boys' toilets was like girls had always. Girls would go to the toilet and all talk to each other. Blokes' toilets were never like that. But in around that time, everybody was in there because we're all waiting for the cubicle to do gear. I'm in the cubicle. Everyone's yabba, 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 yabba. Oh, great pipe. You see showing and blah, 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 blah. And it went, door open. It just went quiet. And I'm like, the fuck is going on? And then I heard Terry Venables talking, all right, boys, all right, let's go. Join the club, And then I was like, fuck what? I don't want to meet Terry Venables. So I did the line very quickly and went out. And at that point, the young guys loved Loaded. So they were like, I was the guy from the magazine that they loved. It wasn't about me. It was about the fact that I was the guy from the magazine. And two of them went, Terry, this is James from Loaded. He does Loaded magazine. Do you know Loaded? Venables goes, of course I know it. Can't get it off them when I'm trying to do a team talk.
Jesus Christ. That's
when I knew that they'd got the magazines. That I'd sent the box on a delivery, on a card out to Burnham Beaches. It was out in the Thames Valley. So sort of country house hotel where they were kind of practicing and warming up for the tournament.
Jesus.
It's funny, isn't it? It's like,
yeah, it's thinking of the England national squad reading it like, yeah, it must be crazy.
now look at me, I'm on the Dash Raspberry.
What is it nice that?
I'm really falling in with the wrong crowd. The health drinks.
Yeah, it's changed.
This is just 0 calories. I hope it's got nothing bad in it. I had to stop drinking the Red Bull and the Diet Coke because I was drinking too much of it. Dash. I buy these in bulk. It's better than drinking Red Bull.
There's a thing in here I can't find. It's there. George Best signed thing. Did you meet him then?
Yes.
Like, side photo.
I met George a couple of times.
Yeah, best wishes to James. Yeah.
He was like the archetypal loaded hero. Apart from he played for Man U. But I always think of Best. There's people that I've met who've watched him play at Man U, older guys. And they think of him as a Man U player. But really, by about 75, 76, I think he might have been at Fulham by then, but he was more famous for being arrested or being with Miss World or having this kind of rock and roll lifestyle and or not showing up to play or train at Man United under Tommy Docherty. So he became like Gazza in a way. He was bigger than the club that he played for. And because of his infamy as well as his talent. And so, if you talk to anyone about George Best, they'll either talk to you about when he played for Manchester United or they'll talk about his lifestyle.
Yeah.
So for Loaded, that was what we were all about, like having a good time, football, girls, drinking. And the time I remember meeting him was with Peter Hooton from The Farm. He was in the video for Don't You Want Me Baby.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they did a cover for our NME charity album. And they covered the Human League hit, Don't You Want Me Baby. And I went to the video. And so I was just sitting at the bar. George's role in the video was just sit in the bar. So I was just sitting at the bar. I mean, he was just like, it was exciting. I don't know where that came from, where he signed that for me. Somebody maybe gave me it.
What was he like? Was he a nice guy, like, to talk to him?
He was very used to just chatting to people who were in awe of him.
Really, yeah.
He was polite and friendly. He was nice. He was... yeah.
Yeah, like you say, it's a cherry play for my United, but he's that, like you say, rock and roll football. Like the first, really, wasn't he? Or the biggest. What else have we got?
This is my life now. Sharpies, going through them, signing the magazines. I've signed about 400 of them now.
Really?
I have to buy them 20 at a time.
How can people get a signed one then?
If they go to my my Instagram or my Twitter account, I don't really use it anymore, but it is still there if they're on Twitter. But if they go to my Instagram, both of the addresses are at James Brown, and I've just been selling them through there. And all the ones that there, I just sign and dedicate myself and post. But also there's a really great magazine shop called Mag Culture, and they're on Instagram and they're on they're on the internet. If you just go to, it's probably www.magculture.com or something like that. That's a brilliant magazine shop. It's got a lot of fashion and a lot of one-offs, but it's also got great music magazines. It's got great football magazines, all the independents.
Yeah.
So it's you can go down there and you can order it online there if you're not on Instagram. But you don't get me spelling all the best wrong in it. I can't. That's ironic. We're talking about George Best. I can't write the word best. I can't write. I go B-E and then the S looks like shit. And then I do the T. And then I try and make the S more like a capital S. I've got It looks like all the Burt.
No, just going through. There's loads of stuff in here you could talk about. Um, I think what sums it up is asking Michael Stipe from REM if he'd ever thought of having his dick pierced.
Yeah, that was John Wilde. So what was great for me about Loaded was I'd managed to find or recruit from people I knew or people I discovered a great writing team. And I obviously get most closely associated with Loaded because it was my idea. I started it.
Mm.
And but then there were all these other guys that I brought in. Tim was really important. He was the deputy, the kind of like the assistant editor. Martin Deason was a brilliant writer. There's this guy, John Wilde. John had been the editor of Jamming for a little while, and then he'd been on Sounds when I was there. But he'd come with me to meet the original manager of the Rolling Stones. And Andrew Lou Goldham, who's a legend, he's trying to get him. He's got amazing stories. Andrew was still drinking at that point, and he was like trying to dangle John out of the window of this hotel in Sloane Square. And John wrote the most amazing article, and I was in it, and the band I was managing was in it, and it was all about Andrew. And at this night in the hotel, Gary Oldman was there.
Oh, yeah.
I introduced Gary Oldman, who's not very tall, to Andrew Lou Goldham. I've never told anyone about this. It was in this hotel just off the Sloane Square. So I'm stood there with her. I mean, nowadays you take a photo, wouldn't you? Or you get one with them, or you take a. And there was just these two were chatting, and John wrote a brilliant article, and then when I started trying to put the writing team together for Loaded, I thought I've got to get John Wilde. That article, the craziness he caught that was in the room, and then John starts doing the celebrity interviews, and they were just brilliant. They were absolutely brilliant. He would ask the most insane questions. So you've just quoted the one about asking Michael Stipe from REM if he ever thought about getting his cock pierced. And Stipe takes it in good grace and says, I have, but I'm worried about the watering can effect. And John would do just very famous people, Alexander O'Neill, Paula Yates, a lot of musicians, people like Shane again, and they were mainly just Q&A, Blur. He asked Damon Albarn if he fancied the Queen. They prompted like bonkers replies, and I loved them. The two, I used to love waiting for John's interviews to come in because they were absolutely brilliant. They were absolutely brilliant interviews. And so that was, I just put that in there really because you think of REM as I think of them as not a very flamboyant looking group.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah.
How they look visually, somebody like Oasis or Velvet Underground, we mentioned, or Public Enemy, they all really care about how they look. But REM, I didn't really ever think were like that. So we had John's brilliant interview, and I was thinking, oh God, what sort of photo? We didn't get to take pictures. What sort of picture are we going to use? A bloody boring looking REM. And then the picture editor comes in and goes, look at these. They were from Time Out. And Time Out hadn't used this one, and they had big white cards saying REM, but they'd done one where they shuffled the letters.
Yeah, can you see that?
Yeah, EMR, an exclamation mark. But that hadn't been used because you can see on the back, if they'd ever been used, they would be marked up. There'd be There'd be like lines with percentage marks of how big or small they should be, and that never been used. So it was we were very lucky at Loaded. We seemed to stumble across things that fitted our outlook.
Like you said, he took it in good stead, like had a laugh about it. Would you ever get serious people that you couldn't have a laugh with?
You'd have to ask John. I can't. John wasn't like in any way what people might have thought the Loaded writers were like. He wore leather and plastic trousers. He was a punk. He went on Newsnight one night on Question Time or something, dressed all in rubber. It was just like he kept going, Mr. Paxman, Mr. Paxman. he wasn't like, he wouldn't have had an Adidas tracksuit top or anything like that. But he was a football fan. He was a Man United fan. He was a big George Best fan, and he was. But he wasn't. He was a pure. His world was music and books. He loved fiction and music, but he was nothing like, what people wrongly assumed the Loaded staff would be like.
We've Loaded, like even like that, like Biscuits asking like.
That's my favourite thing ever.
Is it? Yeah, it's funny like that.
Well, basically, when I was a little boy, those biscuits, sports biscuits, my granny would give me them, and I used to love them. And if you're listening to this and you've never seen it, he's holding it up, and it's stick figures playing darts or tennis or fencing, or they've even got skateboarding because they've modernised it, or hurdling. So I wanted to get them in, and then we decided there's something like 12 different sports. So we went to people who practice, though, experts, professional sports people. Yeah. So we went to like the darts champion and the table tennis player, and they all gave us quotes. If you read those, none of those quotes are made up. They're all real quotes.
Yes. You got like Eric Bristow, Steve Collins.
Like, there's Chris, what's it, the England fast bowler, talking about Chris Lewis, the England fast bowler, and the crafty Cockney, the darts. Oh, they loved it. They thought it was a bit of fun. We probably faxed them the dart. We faxed them a photocopy of the biscuit, and then them or the PR had said. And I think the only thing that came back that wasn't real was Cliff Richard,
spokesperson.
We said, let's get Cliff Richard for the tennis, because he's always fucking singing at Wimbledon when it was raining. I'm not a Cliff Richard fan. And his PR goes, Cliff unfortunately has too many commitments to be able to answer your quote about the sports biscuit tennis. Good luck. So we just put that in. But that to me is, when people talk about the media perception of what Loaded is, they've never understood that it was full of things like professional sportsmen talking about sports biscuits, or REM answering John Wilde's insane questions. And that's why I used to get pissed off about it, because the readers knew it was a huge sort of bag of all sorts of funny and interesting things. There'd be about 6 pages of I might have some girls on it looking hot.
Yeah, I'm gonna say like that was the like backlash one that you ended up getting later on.
Adam?
You ended up getting a bit of backlash later on as like sexist, but like you say, it's just there's more to it than that, isn't there? There's a lot more to it.
Well, people used to write an article and then they'd slagging loads off. They'd interview me. This is years after I left. And then they'd put a picture that was from like 5 years after I'd been the editor. Whereas if they dipped in, they might have had the Simpsons for my time. It might have been the Simpsons or Martin Clunes from Them Behaving Badly, or Jack D or Uma Thurman talking about Pulp Fiction, in a polo neck, black polo neck. But they didn't. They'd always put the Babe Station hand bra shots that followed later on.
What is that like for you? Because you created that, and then later on it goes like down that route. But you've left. What was that like?
Well, it wasn't great, because as soon as it started happening, I was gone. I was at GQ, and then I was doing my own business this beginning of this century. So I didn't want to wade in and defend it, because I'd kind of moved on. But then as it went on and on, I mean, I've got to tell you, I didn't think they'd be like talking about it 32 years after. It's 34 years since I had the idea.
Jesus.
I'm still getting asked to do things at podcasts and meetings and festivals and exhibitions, and it's relentless.
It's crazy. Like, but there's not been anything like that though, has there?
No.
That attracts your typical male, especially these days as well. You don't get anything that.
Well, the thing now is everything that was the sort of thing that we would do. You see appear the humour that we had in the magazine. So if you take really popular accounts like On the Tools, or what's the three lads who were the football guys?
Not under the cosh.
Yeah, things like those sort of interviews were the sort of interviews that we would have had in, and but obviously, so now that type of humorous, irreverent anecdote. I mean, there's too many of them now. You just everyone who's ever been a goalie for Gillingham's got a podcast. It's like it's too much. I'm not bothered. I switch off.
It is a brilliant book, like you say. You had Animal Farm, but this is more your life in a picture form, in it, of visuals.
Next, I'm going to do it in Braille. Yeah, I mean, I think probably when people ask about it, there's two reactions: they buy it or they don't because it's expensive. But then when people get it who've bought it, they're like, "Wow," because it's pretty much just like a book, really. It's got better paper than any magazine I've ever worked on. Smells great. It holds the ink well. You talk to any magazine editor, they'll talk to you about the smell of the ink.
It is a brilliant read.
Do you know what? We finished it like, I don't know, like something like the 6th of December. And then we got it away. And then I went away. I took one with me. I took a few photos of people in Vietnam reading it and stuff. And then I came back. And then when I started sending them out, 3 separate occasions I've ended up just reading it. Because there's deliberately so many different little bits. I forgot how much I'd written in it. Because it's mainly a visual remix of Animal House. Zine Age Kicks, Visual Evidence of a Life in Music and Magazines by me, J. Brown. And it's a dub play. It's a book remixed. And I just wondered if you could do it, have you read the contents list?
I will have done when I read it.
Read that when we've finished. Because everybody skips away from things like contents lists. So that's an article.
Yeah.
It's not a contents list. It just looks like a contents list. And it's talking about how boring regular bits of magazines are always skipped over.
And I think I did. Ironically.
And read the tiny print at the bottom. The really.
I didn't read that, Rick, so I remember laughing at that. Yeah.
But there's a few. I just thought I need to do a couple of pages that are actually loaded about the funnier, the more unusual things we did.
Yeah, it's class. So what are you working on now? Were you saying about like?
What am I working on? I've got a couple of things I can't talk about yet.
Right. Yeah.
I've been helping quite a mainstream women's magazine do a supplement.
Really?
That's out in April, but it won't be like this. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, over the years, I've done a lot of really straight work, just using what my basic skills are as an editor or a publisher. So it's just a job there, but I'm doing it with the best editor in England. She just got the Editor of the Year award last year, so that's been enjoyable. And that'll come out in April in her magazine. And then I've got 3 different book pitches that I've written 80% of.
What?
The problem is I never finish things.
You like to say what it is like, or?
Yeah, I mean, one of them's a football story, and another one is a business book, and another one is a more travel orientated anecdotes and especially music. A bit like when we were talking about the night with Joe Strummer and Mick Jones, or Getting Trampled. They're just briefly mentioned in Animal House. But I've obviously got all the articles. I've got this guy, Isaac, coming round, this keen young Stone Roses fan, just come and knocked on my door.
Did it?
Yeah, and knocked on my door and asked me if he could help. Is there anything I could help you with? His mum had bought his dad a copy of Animal House. And they just said, can we come and get your new thing? Jeez. So he's going to... Obviously, I don't have any staff. I don't have a lot of things. So I thought, well, this guy wants to do something and he loves that period of music like you do. So I said, I tell you what, let's sort out my archive and properly get it in order. And so he'll get to sit and read all the NMEs from the late 80s into the 90s that I did. And then we'll work out which stories that I can revisit. And I've
Yeah.
also there's two screen things going on as well, which if they happen, they'll be amazing. And I think one of them's definitely going to happen. So, but I've signed like contracts to not speak about these things.
Just for that, James, I'll leave a link to
Pleasure.
your Instagram and what was that
White
site
album.
called? Is
What's that?
what was that site called again? The magazine site.
Mag culture.
Right, I'll leave a link to that as well then.
Yeah, mag culture. They'll have it on their sales link. They sold 28 in a week.
Yeah, like I say, it's brilliant. Like,
And I had to send them. I got back from Newcastle Leeds. I had to take them another box of 18 in.
did
So
you?
hopefully they'll sell out. Yeah, buy them from there. Then I don't have to sign the fuckers. Really enjoyed chatting again.
Yeah, it's been brilliant. Thank you, James. Yeah,
Keep going. This is how I started.
yeah. Cheers. Yeah,
Just pestering people to be interviewed and being enthusiastic.
yeah. That's all you can do in it, and let's see where it goes.
Just keep going.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
Remember to do loads of links.
yeah. I
Like,
will do. Yeah, and I'll
it's either chicken wrap or maybe steak sandwich.
yeah, enjoy. Yeah. Nice one. Thank you.
Bye bye.